great progress carried out along these lines. Here at the bottom, at the right-hand side, we have an example of a cave that we use in the Ford plant. It is a virtual environment, and we reproduce the inside of a car. And this is used in the automotive sector a lot, so as to design a car. I think that you understand now what is the core of our discipline, what the terminology is, that virtual reality is not a virtual environment. And now let's talk about physical reality and virtual reality. We don't have a clear division between these two concepts. There is a continuum of mixtures of virtual and real elements. The idea of this continuum of what's reality and what's virtual was expressed by Milgram in 1994. We have the real environment and the virtual environment, but in between we can have a mixture. So if in the real environment we add a geometrical element, we have an increase of that reality. If we can talk also about an increased virtuality if we mix reality and the virtual environment. And we can also talk about a pure virtual environment. But all of this continuum is called mixed reality. And right now, in this field of research, we are suggesting mixed reality environments where we mix both real and virtual elements. The first question that you might pose is truth, or reality. But do you know what reality is? This is not a crystal clear issue, because since the ancient Greeks times, they were asking themselves if reality or the concept of reality is as clear as as it is thought of. So usually we talk about Plato and the allegory of the cave. This is a metaphor, an idea that he had, that humans, we were like prisoners in a cave, and on the wall of the cave we saw the projection of the shadows of the human beings that were behind us and that we could not see. And then a prisoner gets out of the cave, he explores the real life, and he realized that what we thought it was reality until now were just those shadows of the reality. Well, that's the philosopher as we understand it. But this idea of reality is always linked to a question mark. It's this illusion of our perception. What we call reality depends on what we perceive. So there's this issue of perception and reality. And there is another question that psychoanalysts such as Freud and also Clay and more recently Winnicott have been focusing on. Freud was talking about the existence of a psychic reality. Beyond the physical reality, we have the ability to develop a psychic reality which is not based on the senses, on perceptions. And people who have pathologies such as neurosis, especially neurosis, well, those patients have in their awareness a psychic reality, which is more important than the physical reality. And this is also a field for exploration, because we want to create technology to reproduce virtual worlds, and we will not try to reproduce only worlds that are close to the real world, but maybe we can reproduce worlds that are close to the psychic worlds. And going back to Plato, we will try to create fake scenarios so as to explore other realities, other ways to relate to people. And going back to the psychoanalysts, I don't know if you know the theory of Moreno of psychodrama, but a way of talking about neurosis is it's by using theater, the psychodrama. And this is also a way or an issue that we can introduce in these virtual environments, because we can create a drama of these emotional issues. And since we are talking about theater, and that's virtual reality, well, this world comes from from theater. Renaud Artaud, a French theater playwright from the beginning of last century, caused a revolution with this definition, because he said that he didn't want a fixed scenario. He wanted an experience, a theater play in which the audience could participate from that theater experience. They could live an experience that theater play. So it's like an experience, theater, virtuality, are all of these different words mixed together. In the 80s, Jaron Lowry took this idea of the virtual reality and this theater approach and he linked all of these with virtual reality. So I talk about theater, psychoanalysis, philosophy, because we should always remember the origin. We have the technology right now, but we need to take into account our abilities as people, our limitations. The advantages of using virtual reality, well, number one, we can reproduce all of the existing material processes. We can reproduce experiences in a very frequent manner. We can monitor them. This is much cheaper than setting physical scenarios. And we can also have the possibility of being in different places and having different people from different places participating in the same experience. And also we reduce risks, physical risks. In a virtual environment, there are less physical risks than in a real environment. And we can also simulate reproducible processes that could exist in reality. It's what happens in the car industry. We reproduce a car that does not exist but could exist. And the virtual environment here also stimulates the creative process. And we can also verify everything before building the new ideas. And we can implement this virtual reality in different fields. For example, video games to stimulate the creative process. It is very good. It is very much used in the artistic field, and we can also simulate the physical and psychical reality. So we have what's virtual, what's real, a mixture of both. And we have the feedback from the video and the user. We saw that before. The user who was with the encephalogram, he needed some information. He needed more detailed information. And what did this robot use? The geometric model. So we had a reality, the real scenario, but we had that geometric model that was increasing that reality. So we have just seen that, and we're using this in medicine, where we overlap the image of the model, for example, the brain of the patient, on top of the real image. So this is an increased reality. So we have a virtual universe, but if there's the presence of a real agent, that can increase that virtuality and that reality there. Here we have the example of a video conference with the real people that can increase that feeling of reality. So we have this mixture of all of these elements. So reality, virtuality, and increasing both fields. So here we have a mixture of everything, and I have projected here on the screen a recent article that has been published, which is very interesting. Here they suggest a system. They suggest to use a system for people who have, for patients who have some mammary problems. So here we see these issues through some stereoscopic devices, and this model is a virtual model, and the person, the user, has the real touch, but the interaction is done on a virtual model. So there is not an actor that pretends to be a patient, because this would be cumbersome. But at the same time, the virtual model conveys reality. This was my general presentation. Alberto, if I'm saying something which is wrong, please let me know. Let's talk about neuropsychology. This is the organization of the brain and its behavior. And right now, we are focusing on neurorehabilitation. And the key idea here is that through some specific training, we can improve the functional deficit of patients who have brain damage. The idea is that there is brain damage, but we can improve it with some specific training. The problem is that cognitive rehab has to be very intensive and also repetitive. We need to repeat the exercises many times, and it has to be extended throughout time. And we need to take into account the different situations of the patients. So we have to carry out this in different environments, because patients live in different places. And we need to have feedback. We need to carry out the exercise, but the patient needs to know if they are doing a good job or they are not doing the exercise well, and if there are any improvements. And the therapists need to have this information, of course. And we need to be motivated in this rehab process, because this is a long process and we shouldn't get bored throughout time. We also need to follow up and monitor the whole process throughout time, and we need to offer information about the